Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so based on the material you've sent over, we're going to try and cut through some of the noise today. We're looking at Donald Trump's recent statements on the whole Iran-Israel situation. Our mission really is just to pull out the most important bits of knowledge and insight for you straight from these sources.
Yeah, and what's pretty fascinating here is how these statements seem to blend really aggressive military talk with this, well, surprising openness to diplomacy. Conditional, of course, but still there.
Openness, right.
If you sort of connect this to the bigger picture, it looks like a strategic play designed for, maximum leverage, aiming for a very specific outcome.
Okay, let's dig into the specifics then, because this is where it gets really interesting. First up, his remarks on U.S. military strikes. He's described U.S. forces mentioning B-2 bombers, the stealth ones and these bunker busters, meant for hardened targets, saying they completely and totally obliterated Iran's key nuclear sites. He actually named Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. Those are the critical, really fortified enrichment places.
Yeah, the big ones.
And claims this was done with Israel, called it a spectacular military success even, and warned Iran faces more attacks unless they, quote, make a deal. That's quite a statement. What does that language signal?
Well, it immediately signals an extreme readiness for decisive action, kinetic action. But he's also issued what he calls an ultimate ultimatum to Iran.
An ultimatum?
Yeah, except unconditional surrender or face more brutal attacks. He emphasizes, that peace is the goal, but force is definitely on the table if Iran goes for nuclear weapons, which, frankly, raises a big question for us. How does demanding unconditional surrender really square with the path to peace? Historically, that's a high-stakes gamble.
Right, you're aiming for quick capitulation.
Exactly, but it risks dragging things out if the other side digs in under that kind of pressure.
And beyond just the immediate military stuff, it seems like he's looking past just a simple ceasefire. He said he's not focused on that. He wants a real end to the conflict. He even admitted sometimes they have to fight it out, but still voiced hope for a deal eventually. That sounds like a much longer-term view, not just stopping the fighting now.
Precisely. And he's clearly warned Iran that U.S. interests are off-limits. He frames it as Iran having a choice between peace or tragedy.
Stark choice.
Very. And furthermore, his praise for Israel's strikes, calling them excellent and predicting more to come, it shows unwavering support while keeping up this really firm, almost coercive stance.
It's also interesting how he talks about U.S. involvement. Initially, he said the U.S. was not involved, right?
Right.
But then he sort of leaves the door wide open, saying it's possible we could get involved. He's even mentioned being open to, Russian mediation, maybe through Putin, and suggested Iran seeking talks might actually be because of these strikes. So the U.S. is out, but maybe in, and maybe Russia helps. It's a bit.
It points to a kind of nuanced control, maybe, or attempting control. And this brings us to a really serious point: the private approval of U.S. war plans against Iran, with a public announcement apparently pending. Now, that signals a genuine readiness for action that goes way beyond just tough talk. It makes the threat highly credible.
So war plans are actually approved.
Seems so. Though he apparently cautioned against a long war, maybe because of congressional backlash. But he starkly stressed the choice: war or a nuclear-armed Iran, framing it like there's no other option from the U.S. side.
Okay. So when we try to piece all this together, the strong words, the claims of military success, these ultimatums, the hints about involvement, and now approved war plans. What can we, really take away from this complex messaging? What's the bottom line for the listener here?
Well, what it looks like is a really hard-line posture. It combines that intense military rhetoric with a very specific kind of diplomatic openness. He advocates for peace, sure, but it's peace under extremely high-pressure conditions. Ultimatums backed by what seems like credible military readiness.
Peace through strength, but maybe peace through threat.
You could say that.
Yeah.
This blended messaging, while definitely praising Israel's actions, also seems to signal a way out, an off-ramp for de-escalation if Iran basically capitulates. He clearly positions the U.S. right at the center, giving intel, preparing military options, trying to control the escalation ladder. So for you listening, this means that immediate escalation is, well, a distinct possibility if Iran doesn't meet these demands. But those diplomatic paths, they seem to remain open, even if they're under these incredibly tough U.S. conditions. Regional stability. As a result, it remains, incredibly volatile.
Right. So you've just gotten our deep dive into the key takeaways from the statements you asked us about, hopefully giving you a clearer picture of this incredibly volatile geopolitical situation.
Yeah, and it definitely raises an important question for you to think about.
Right.
How might this unique blend of peace through strength, but combined with a demand for unconditional surrender, how might that actually impact the future of diplomacy and conflict resolution more broadly, on the global stage?
Definitely something to mull over until our next deep dive. Thanks for joining us.